Alright, welcome back everybody. This is GTM. Sorry, I'm just waking up. We're going to be talking about 3D Max here. We're going to be introducing you to the basic interface. Important things you need to know about how to use your viewports, how to create objects, basically how to convert your objects and explain certain properties. Anyways, like I said, I'm just waking up, so bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and launch up 2011 3D Max. Alright, as you can see here, we have our 4 viewports right off the bat. This is the first thing you're kind of, focusing on here. Notice we have a top, a front, a left, and perspective. And as you guys are starting off, throughout my video tutorials, I like to make it a habit for people that are, my students as well, or people that are just being introduced to 3D Max, to keep your viewports at these standard views just for now. As you get used to 3D Max, you may eventually want to change your layout. And the way you can change your layout is, see these little plus signs here? You can go from there, right click and configure, and you have certain layouts you can play with. Or you can actually create your own. But for now, let's just keep it these at top, front, perspective, and left. Alright, also another thing is, like I said, you have that configure mode. That's something you want to be familiar with. You have different options here. Things you can probably explore with later on. Alright, you also have, let's see, like I said, if you click on the viewport here, you can see it activates it. Also, I believe these came in, I'm not sure, 2009 or 10. You have these options here. How you can actually manually maneuver around in your viewports. If you need to switch one, you can actually click here and click the little arrow. You can go to your right, back to your left, or front. This is your left. Oops, sorry. This is your left. Top, and obviously this is orthographic now. Which, if you ever get an orthographic, if you're first starting off with 3D Max, I highly recommend you get out of here quickly. This can cause a lot of problems. So for now, let's just keep that at front, and always keep these at your standard default settings right here. Alright, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put a box in here, and I got my standard geometry selected, and we'll talk about these later. Better yet, I'm going to go ahead and go with a sphere. I'm going to create that in here. Notice the grid on the ground. If I want to turn that off, I'm just going to hit G. That's my hotkey that turns off my grid on and off. I believe also I can probably go from here maybe and turn off the grid, show grids. But like I said, your hotkey is G. Whenever I introduce you to hotkeys, try to get familiar with them. They can really help you out. Alright, for now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my grid. Alright, another thing I want to explain about is these options right here. You have smooth and highlights. This is what we're seeing, and notice these are on wire, so we're seeing the wireframe. You have personal settings you can use when working. I personally like to work with smooth and edge faces a lot. Now if I want to turn off my edges for an object or whatever, you can just hit F4. That is your hotkey to turn off and on your edges. Otherwise, like I said, you have different options. Feel free to explore. You got your standard wire and edge faces. You have hidden lines, so you're not seeing the back side. You have flat, where you don't see any kind of light. It's like kind of like in default lighting or illuminated lighting of some sort. Otherwise, like I said, I'm going to keep these at smooth and edge faces. Alright, let's see what else. Right over here, this is somewhere you want to be familiar with, these tools right here. So if I hit my zoom tool, I can zoom in and out. That's my magnifying glass. Or if you take your middle mouse, you can kind of zoom in increments. So as you're working, you'll be zooming in and out. But if you need to get a little more accurate, just use the magnifying glass. Click with your left mouse, hold it down, and you can kind of zoom in more accurately. Alright, also right here you have zoom all. So for example, I'm going to mess up my top viewport. I'm way out here. Got my front viewport, it's kind of over here. Left is over here, zoomed in really close. That's where I can't see what's going on. Perspective is zoomed way out. If you hit that, that kind of zooms. Oh, let's make sure that, you know, if I select the object and then I hit zoom all, it will actually, whoops, yeah, I can zoom all at one time. Which, that was kind of a bad example. What I was trying to get at was, I forgot, you have zoom all extent. So you can click that, and that will zoom everything back up into place. So I'll explain that a little bit more. Also, you got your pan tool, which is your hand, so you can pan back and forth. And your hotkey for that would technically just your middle, so you can hold it down and you can pan. Alright. Let's see. Of course, your minimize and maximize right here. Viewport, maximize viewport toggle. If I click that on and off, minimizes and maximizes. So the hotkey for that though is Alt W. So hit Alt W and that will minimize and maximize your viewport. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and throw a box in the scene. And I'm going to go ahead and convert that box into a poly. And we'll talk more about these modes here later. You know, your vertexes, your edge, your borders, polygons, and elements. We'll talk about that later. What I do want to get at though is this tool right here, the orbit sub-object. So if I select that, you know, you can notice there's a little kind of like a yellow circle. That lets you know that you're orbiting around kind of the world. You know, you're not selecting a specific object. Or even if I was selecting on the object and use that, you know, I'm kind of just rotating slightly around that object. Alright, but the hotkey for that is if you hold down Alt and your middle mouse, moving around, you start to orbit. Get used to that, using your Alt and middle mouse. Alright, so I'm selecting him, and I'm orbiting around him now. If I select the sphere, I'm orbiting around him now. Now here's something a little interesting. Notice if you mouse over, that's object sub, orbit sub-object. If I hold it down, you have a couple other options. This one right here, I mouse over, that's orbit select. So, you know, that technically, you know, if I select the object, I'm actually orbiting, everything else is orbiting around that object. And that is the center, kind of like it was an Earth or something, and everything else is rotating around it. Alright, so if I select on him, you know, obviously I'm orbiting around that now. Everything's orbiting around that. Alright, another interesting thing is, let's go down to the next one. That right here is, this one can get you confused. If I Z up on it, you know, I can orbit around, but if I zoom out and start orbiting, things can get a little hectic if I'm not, you know, really focused on an object here. Oh, that's just your standard orbit. Like I said, things can get a little crazy. For now, keep it right here. Also, though, check this out. If I actually select, let's say a vertex, I'm going to grab one of those vertexes. I'm going to Z up on it. Now, notice I'm orbiting around just that vertex. So that is with, you know, the orbit sub-object. You know, so keep that in mind. Alright, let's see what else we have here. One more thing I want to talk about is this guy right here, the zoom, the field of view. A lot of people, when they first start at Max, they assume that's kind of a zoom in and out object, you know, or like a magnifying glass. Problem is, when you start using this tool, your perspective, notice, see, it starts to get weird. It's like a crazy field of view. It's like opening a field of view of a camera or something. So things can get really out of whack. Notice we're not a weird looking perspective now. So here, I'll even make it more prominent. Let's go. See, things are getting really kind of crazy. Now see, I've already lost what's going on. There we go. Now if you want to change that back to normal, see now we're in this weird looking field of view. You go right to the plus sign, configure. If you go to regions, I'm sorry, where is it? Right here, rendering methods here. Your field of view has changed. It's at 10 now. Standard's supposed to be 45. Always change that back if your viewports are starting to look a little weird. And, you know, just go ahead and go back to orbit tool or something. Or your move tool. Oops, let me deselect that. And that way, you know, your field of view is back to normal. Alright, so I'm going to Alt-W out of there. And like I said, that's your basic on your viewports here. There's a couple other things we can probably talk about, you know. Like, for example, if I select a face, I'm going to convert that editable poly here. I'm going to select the face. Notice it highlights. In some cases, you might actually hit a hotkey. And if you click right here on the plus signs in your configure mode, you know, shade selected faces might get somehow unchecked. So when you select, you're only seeing a wire. I see a lot of students end up working in this way because they assume that's normal. I mean, you can work in that way if you prefer that way. I just personally like to have my faces selected, so I'm just going to go back, turn that back on, and press OK. Alright, so that's pretty much your basics on your viewport. I mean, I'm sure we can get into a lot more. But like I said, as you guys are starting out, as you're modeling things, things will start to catch on, you know. You'll start to pick up some pretty good habits. And usually in my videos, what I like to explain is things that you don't want to do, you know, bad habits you don't want to create. For example, one of the most important things about this video is if you accidentally get an orthographic. Notice, you know, I'm in orthographic in all my viewports. I highly recommend not trying to work in this view because this can really screw you up. So, like I said, this is your front, F key. This is my top, and this is my, let's go left, and obviously we'll keep this at perspective. Once again, your Alt-W is your minimize and maximize depending on what viewport you're activating. Also, your middle mouse and Alt key is your arc rotate. Your middle mouse is pan, and then your middle mouse, well actually if you middle mouse hold is pan. If you zoom in and out or roll your roller ball, or your middle mouse I should say, that zooms out in and out in increments. Alright, and that should be it. Alright, we'll continue with the next video. We'll probably talk about creating, you know, working with our geometry now. And this is the control panel. Which, by the way, we'll talk about this, you know, in the next video. The control panel and the settings in here. Alright, thanks for watching. Hopefully this somewhat helped.